Hello, Dr. Cubitt.
Hi, Katie.
How is everyone doing? We've got some people on and already know the drill and letting us know where they're from. It's great to see we've got some from California, Michigan. Drop where you're from if you haven't had a chance yet. We'd love to know who we're talking to. I think that is also super helpful when we're having these discussions to kind of know what part of the country you're in because things can be very different. Arizona, Ocala, Florida. Sue, it's great to have you here. Missouri. Cindy from New Jersey. Cindy has been on a Facebook Live before. Welcome, everyone. It is so great to see you. And Dr. Cubitt, you a couple weeks ago just got back recently from quite a trip.
Yes, I took the family to New Zealand to visit more family, and yeah, it was a long trip.
I bet it was a long trip, and it's been a little while since you've had a chance to get back there, hasn't it?
It has been. This was a trip that was scheduled for 2020, and we all know what happened then.
Right.
So it was a long time coming, and yeah, it was just a good time. Got to see some cool things and visit family, and always good to
Awesome.
get back though.
Well, good. And we're glad to have you back here because I know it's been a little bit since I've had a chance to chat with you on the podcast and
I
everything. And
know.
yeah, so it's good. So actually, I did want to ask, is anybody from Ohio? I don't know if I saw anybody from Ohio or not. If anybody is from Ohio, let me know. One cool thing I wanted to share with you all is Standlee is actually currently a sponsor of the World Equestrian Center in Wilmington, Ohio. The Sanctuary Arena is currently the Standlee Sanctuary Arena, and so if any of you guys are from Ohio, um, uh, Jennifer was originally from Ohio, and Jennifer, you have been on a Facebook Live before as well. Welcome. Thanks for coming, you guys. So I wanted to let you all know, for those who haven't been on before, we are going to be drawing later on some free Standlee free product coupons. There will be just for interaction and hanging out with us today will be a winner. But then also, if you could right now go ahead and share this Facebook Live to your Facebook page and make sure it's a public post so we can see it. But one person will also win some free product coupons from sharing this Facebook Live. So go ahead and do that right now as we're getting started and more people are rolling in and everything. And then we're also going to ask you to fill out a survey at the end to kind of help us make these better, make improvements. And somebody who fills out that survey will also win some free product coupons. So for those of you who are on here, how many of you have attended a Facebook Live before? I'm just kind of curious to know who we have present. I know there's been a couple familiar names, and forgive me if I don't remember everybody, but usually the people that ask more questions are the ones that stand more out to me. Um, we've got some excellent. Okay, perfect. Good. So I'm assuming then we have some newbies as well. So welcome to our Facebook Lives if you haven't attended before. This is our second time that we've actually posted a topic for this one, and we're going to be talking about horse feeding myths. And we all know some that have been around, some new, but some have been around since the days of old. So, um, for those of you who haven't been on before, my name is Katie Starr, and I am one of the co hosts of the Beyond the Barn podcast. And I grew up in Central Oregon on a beef cattle operation and went to the University of Idaho to get degrees in animal science, production, and agribusiness, and moved around a little bit, doing some marketing and sales with different ag industries, and landed. I've been with Standlee, I think it's been almost 7 years now, and been working with Dr. Cubitt that long too. Ever since I've been here, she was here before me. So, Dr. Cubitt, do you want to introduce yourself a little bit?
Yes, I am originally from Australia. If you can notice a funny accent, I don't think I have an accent anymore, but my family say I do. And I moved here in 2001 to go to grad school and did a master's and PhD in equine nutrition. And now I have a little farm here in Virginia with my husband and 2 kids and some cows. And, they have a horse farm next door, so I don't actually have to pay for the horses. I have the cows. And yeah, that's my story.
Excellent. And we're so glad to be here today. So as we kind of get started, go ahead and put your questions in the comments and we will get to them. If we seem to have skipped yours, sometimes if questions keep kind of rolling in and we've missed them, go ahead and put it in again. We don't want to miss your guys' questions. So feel free to comment again if you need to get your question and it feels like we maybe missed yours. But one thing I actually wanted to share, because I was going to say something about it anyway, but Natalie, thank you for the kind words. And I might embarrass myself here, but I'm going to attempt it. She says she loves our new packaging. Oh my goodness. And here it is. I just found this in the office and I was like, hey, I'm going to show this today. Anyway, if you guys haven't had a chance to see our new packaging yet, actually, it'd be great to know if you guys have seen it in the stores yet, on shelves, if you've purchased any of the new packaging. But you can go over to our website, and we have this really awesome tool that our team put together to kind of show you what has changed with the packaging, highlight some of the things, the benefits that you can really see on the packaging and know right away what you're getting. So anyway, thank you, Natalie. We really appreciate you recognizing that and bringing that up as we get started here. But okay, we're going to go ahead and get started on our questions. Keep your questions coming in. Remember, the main focus of tonight is horse feeding myths. If you end up having some other questions that roll in, that's all right too. We will see what we can get figured out as we get started tonight. So let's see. Patty Paw says, I use both the alfalfa cubes and the pellets. What is the real difference?
Yeah, that's a great question, Patty. And really, when they're coming from the same company, so I would say when you're talking about Standlee alfalfa pellets versus Standlee alfalfa cubes, then they're all coming from the same raw ingredient, the same great quality alfalfa. And it's really just about the processing and the fiber length. As far as nutritional value, there's no difference. There's not more protein or more energy. But if you have a horse that has really severe chewing difficulties, then sometimes we recommend going with a pellet because it can be soaked and make more of a soup or gruel-like consistency. But the cubes are really they have slightly longer fiber length in them. A lot of people like to feed cubes as a management option. Maybe they're feeding out in a field, and if the horse dumps the bucket over, the cubes are easier to pick up off the ground. But as far as nutritionally, there's no difference in the Standlee products. Now, I can't speak to other companies because potentially they may be using different ingredients, but in the Standlee products, the same quality alfalfa goes into every single alfalfa product, whether it be the long stem hay, the compressed bale, the alfalfa pellet, the cube. It's really then comes down to a management issue of what is the most appropriate to feed to your horse. If you're feeding both cubes and pellets to your horse, then you potentially could just feed one of them.
Excellent. And I did want to throw in, I saw this question come up, which is a good one. Jasmine wants to know how much pellets and how much cubes equals a flake of alfalfa hay.
I have actually a great graphic on this. So Jasmine, that we can see where you type. I want you to tell me how heavy is your flake of hay in pounds. Make a number up.
I'm gonna put her on the spot.
I'm putting you on the spot, Jasmine. Maybe there'll be a coupon in it. And there is no wrong answer. So I'm just going to guess that you say that your flake of alfalfa weighs 4 pounds. I don't know, maybe it's 5 pounds, but let's say it's 4 pounds.
She says, I have
then
no idea.
I have no idea. Well, if you weigh it, the only
She
way to
has no
tell
idea.
is weigh it. And if your flake of alfalfa weighed 4 pounds, then 4 pounds of pellets equals 4 pounds of alfalfa long stem. What you have to be very careful of is feeding by volume, right? You see that flake of alfalfa, but it's less dense. It's more air in it versus 4 pounds of alfalfa pellets is going to be volume-wise a lot less than 4 pounds of long stem alfalfa because it's less air pockets in that container. It's a bit more dense. But 4 pounds is 4 pounds is 4 pounds. Volume-wise, it might look different, but 4 pounds is 4 pounds. And so 4 pounds of long stem alfalfa in a flake of hay will give you the exact same nutritional content as 4 pounds of pellets or 4 pounds of cubes. Scale is the absolute best thing to put in your barn.
Do you have any recommendations on if somebody wanted to weigh, maybe they haven't done it yet, if they're weighing their hay or, their cubes, pellets, or what have you? Do you have some ideas or recommendations on what types of things that they could use?
A cube, like for the cubes, pellets, whatever, just go to the store and buy a cheap kitchen scale. But when it comes to hay, actually, you mentioned I went on that trip to New Zealand, and I never want to pay for heavier bags or anything, or have bags that are too heavy. So I actually picked up at Marshall's, I think, a luggage scale. It's a little handheld thing, and it's got a hook on it, but it weighs up to 200 pounds. I'm going to weigh my calves with that too. So that is a great way to weigh your hay because it's got a hook on it, and you could, as long as you had like a string or something, a hay net, just hang it on there and hold it, and you can weigh it. Fantastic. And I think it cost me $15.
There you go. That's awesome. Well, there we go. And also, I know we have some more questions going in, but I remember I did want to ask you, Dr. Cubitt, kind of as we got started at the beginning before we get too far into it, what do you feel like is probably one of the most common myths that you have heard from horse owners? The ones that you've worked with and things like that.
You told me you were going to ask me this question, and I laughed at you because there are so many. I can't even think of one. And so because we're going into the warmer weather, I think probably one of the myths that pops up a lot when we go into the summer is don't give your horse cold water. It'll make them colic. You know what'll make them colic? Not giving them water. A dehydrated horse is a disaster. And horses, unlike other animals, dehydrate really, really quickly. So don't withhold water, ever. And if it's cold and that's all you've got, let them drink it. It'll be fine.
Do you have a process for just like letting them drink, or do you need to take bits in time, or how would you go about that?
Of course, you never want your horse to get so thirsty that he has to guzzle down water.
Too much, yeah.
Maybe if he drinks a boatload of water, he might get a bit of a stomach ache, just like you would, but he's not going to colic. But I think that the take home is do not ever withhold water from your horse. If they need to drink, let them drink.
Water's so important.
Oh, Melissa says a fish scale works well for us country folk. That's a good idea too.
There you go. Excellent. Okay, let's get to some more questions.
My cup looks giant in the camera. It's not that big.
Okay. This is a tough one, but we're gonna do it.
Ha, Gina, you're so right. Because when I was reading the other day about myths, somebody wrote about the Black Beauty story, and that's Black Beauty drank cold water and then he colicked. Yeah, I love Black Beauty, but that was wrong. He didn't colic because of the cold water.
Okay. I don't know if this is Deanna or Dina. Deanna, probably. I hope I'm saying your name correctly, so forgive me if I'm mispronouncing that. Myth. Feeding dry cubes will choke a horse. Is this true or false?
The answer is both. The answer could be yes and it could be no. Feeding dry cubes to a horse that has never ate cubes before and he's going to eat he's naive to cubes, he's going to eat them fast, he might choke. Feeding dry cubes to a horse that has really poor teeth and can't chew them properly and build up that saliva, he might choke. Feeding dry cubes to a horse that's really hungry and is going to eat really fast, he might choke. Feeding dry cubes to an anxious horse that is in a herd with a bunch of other horses and he's really stressed out and he's going to eat fast, he might choke. Feeding dry cubes to a horse that is not stressed, has fine teeth, is not gutsing his food and eating quickly, won't make him choke. So if you have a situation where you have an old horse, doesn't have great teeth, eats fast, maybe he's hungry when you feed him because your work schedule, you have to feed him larger, less frequent meals, then I would 100% always soak it, because you can't guarantee that he's going to take his time and that his teeth are going to hold up. But if your horse has been eating dry cubes for the last 20 years and he's fine, then he'll continue to be fine. So the answer is not yes or no. It's not the same for every person. And I think that's where, you can go on Facebook and someone will tell you, go to jail if you say feed a dry cube to a horse. Well, every horse is different, just like all people are different. So what I will tell you is soaking anything never hurts, right? If you feel like you want to soak it, soak it. Make sure that it's not soaking so long that in this hot weather it's fermenting and there's flies and it's yucky. But if you just feel like in your gut you want to soak it, but don't kind of persecute someone else because they don't.
Right. Well, and one thing that you said, I heard you say this once, that a lot of these issues that come up with choke tends to be with how we have our horses in our modern living world.
Yeah.
A lot of things so a lot of horses probably tend to need to have it soaked just because of their living situations, how they are, how they're fed, and how they eat and things like that. And so, yes, before anybody goes on the attack, just this is what it is. Yeah.
And the other thing that I'll say on this, because you bring it up, and a lot of people, this is a hot topic for people, and you also mentioned the new packaging, and we've rewritten some of our feeding directions, and I've taken this to a lot of the clients that I work with, and you'll notice that a lot of people were writing, me included, when I wrote directions, 1 part product, pellets, to 3 parts water, or soak it for 30 minutes or something. And now everybody soaks a little different. Everybody's got outside humidity is different. Everybody's soaking it for a little longer, a little less, hot, cold, warm. What I say to everybody is the consistency that you feed it to your horse, you dump it in the bucket or you give them the bucket, that's what you have to take into account. So if you're soaking it for 2 hours, because that's the program in your barn, you need to make sure that a horse that's, say, old and doesn't have great teeth, and we know he's choked in the past and we really want to soak these products, it has to be looking like soup, right? Gruel. Whether that takes you 5 minutes or 50 minutes, that's how you have to feed it to him. Okay? So also take that into account.
Excellent. Thank you, Dr. Cubitt. Jennifer has an interesting question. Will horses not eat toxic plants in pastures?
Never say never, but the general rule of thumb that we as nutritionists go by is horses are selective grazers. If there's other things to eat, they won't typically select toxic plants to eat in a pasture. If there's not a lot of grass and the only thing out there is toxic plants and they're hungry, then they'll nibble on them. But our general idea is that they will not select if there's other things to eat, which most of the time horses get toxic, they will ingest toxic plants if it's in hay, because it is when everything's dry, some of the smell goes away, it's all kind of mixed together, so it's easier for them to consume those toxic plants. That's why at Standlee we have such intense quality control procedures in the fields, in the harvesting, in the manufacturing to make sure that weeds and toxic plants are not ever in the facility or in the product.
Excellent. Let's see. Well, this, okay, I'm gonna put this question up, but I have a feeling that Dr. Cubitt, I have a feeling you're gonna have more questions. I have a miniature horse. What would you recommend from your product line?
And you know what, if I make an assumption, you know what that does. So I wouldn't make an assumption, and I would say, well, first question that I will ask is your mini overweight, underweight, or just right? Then you're going to tell me that answer, and then I would say, okay, is he exercise? Well, you didn't even say it was he. Is it exercising, or is it a broodmare, or is it a stallion, or is it a growing horse? How old is it? Tell me about its teeth. So I would recommend that I can
She's
give you
just
some great
right,
answers.
she says.
She is just right. Okay. And what else do you feed? And do you have pasture access? And do you feed hay? I can certainly email you. You can email me afterwards, and we can kind of have a whole nutrition consult.
Okay, let's break that down a little bit later. Yeah. Okay. Okay, Amy says, and this might also depend on the other things that this horse is eating as well, but how much in pounds can I give a yearling in pellets?
What kind of pellets? Alfalfa pellets, Timothy pellets, grain pellets. The general rule of thumb, again, is that your horse should eat about 1.5 to 2.5% of their body weight in fiber. So
okay. She says alfalfa, by the way.
Alfalfa pellets. Okay. So again, tell me what kind of hay are you feeding? If you're feeding an alfalfa hay, doesn't need alfalfa pellets, unless you don't have enough hay. If you're feeding maybe like a local grass hay and it's a yearling, so it's a growing horse, and we want extra alfalfa, it really depends on the quality of your hay. There's no right or wrong amount of pellets to feed. You feed the amount that's going to balance your diet. It's more about the management of the question is more, how much do I feed at a single time? And with feed, we don't recommend that you feed like grains any more than 4 to 5 pounds in a single meal. Typically with hay or hay pellets, then you can feed as much as you want. But again, it's going to come down to what else are you feeding, how much hay you're feeding, the type of hay you're feeding, and then we would make sure we just balanced the diet. It might be 2 pounds of alfalfa, it might be 4 pounds of alfalfa, I'm not quite sure.
And so with the pellets versus the long stem, it's going to take them a lot longer with the long stem to actually consume that hay versus the pellets, so they will consume it a lot quicker.
Yeah.
Okay. Gina says, true or false, bran mashes help clear sand from the gut?
Ooh, the first easy question. False.
False. So then, if we're needing to clear sand from the gut, what would be a good step to take for that?
Using any of the kind of commercial sand clear type products. They're psyllium based. Not the ones you feed every day, because it's never enough to really flush it all out. Usually it's like you maybe do it once a month or something, and you feed a large amount of it, and it's psyllium, and psyllium gets really gluggy and gluey, and you feed a bunch of it and it glues up around the sand and flushes it out the system. If you just a little bit of psyllium every day, it's never going to have enough strength to bind up all the sand. Maybe it gets 1 or 2 grains of sand out, but it's never going to bind it all up. That's why I don't like the daily sand clear products.
Excellent. Okay. And I have to show this comment just because I really appreciate those of you who are at the barn tuning in. And is this not great? So, Jasmine, hopefully you caught this. If not, watch it afterwards. But if you have other questions, feel free to follow up with us and ask. But we love that you guys are watching us from the barn. Thank you so much for tuning in. Okay, here's another one. Tracy wants to know, I was told growing up to never give a horse grain after a hard workout. Is that true or false?
Yeah, I mean, I always use the endurance horses as a classic example of this, and I was just recently asked about kind of feed meal timing for those endurance horses that go like 100 miles, and it's crazy exercise. And you always want to make sure that after a hard workout that they drink water first. Make sure that they're drinking water. You can give them some hay, and because the hay is also going to act like a reservoir and store that water, and then give them grain. But like you would make sure they cooled down first, because here's the other thing, and why whether it would cause them to colic or not, probably not, but when you're exercising, heavily exercising, blood goes away from your digestive organs and goes to your extremities, to your muscles and to your skin to dissipate heat, right? And after a heavy hard work, the blood is still in the muscles, recovering, bringing electrolytes back into those muscles. It's still at the extremities, dissipating heat. So it's not at the digestive system, so whatever you fed them wouldn't be as absorbed as well anyway, because there's no blood to carry it out of the digestive system off into the rest of the body. So no, make sure they drink first, eat some hay. They've, number one, cooled down, drink first, eat some hay, and then you can feed them some concentrate.
Excellent. Okay, Jennifer says there's a decent amount of clover in my pasture that causes a lot of saliva with my horses. Is there something I can feed my horses to help with clover toxicity?
Not that I know of. And from my understanding, I think there's a certain type of clover that can really cause irritation, but when they're producing a lot of saliva, they are losing moisture, losing a lot of water. So just make sure that they're drinking a lot to cover what they're spitting out, and maybe mowing your pastures as well. I know that I think the clover, when it goes to flower, can cause more of this kind of salivation in horses. So you might want to mow it too.
Perfect. Okay, Kelly says, are cubes intended to replace a regular standard hay feeding or in addition to? In my case, my pasture is overgrazed. I wonder if I should be adding some cubes to my standard feeding.
The answer is yes and no. If your horse has no teeth and can't eat long stem hay, then we'll go to some cubes. They can't consume cubes, then we'll go to pellets. Typically though, if your horse has good dentition, no, cubes should not replace 100% your long stem hay. If let's say you can afford and store just local grass hay in your area, and we know it doesn't have great nutritional value, but it's what I can get, it's what I can afford, and it gives the horses something to chew on and keeps their gut healthy, then cubes can replace a portion of that hay. If your horse is thin, just feed more cubes, especially if you're using an of Standlee product that, as we know, a higher nutritional value than a lot of our local hays. But again, that comes down to is your horse thin? If your horse is fat, then yeah, we need to take away. If we're feeding 5 pounds of cubes, we're taking away 5 pounds of his hay so that he doesn't get too fat. But
excellent. Okay,
I sound very wishy-washy because there's so many other questions, but really it's important. You have to ask so many questions, and it's why online asking questions in a Facebook group, or not our group, but on any of those chats,
Right.
can be really difficult because nobody ever knows the whole story of what's going on with your horse and your management.
Right.
So, when you have a tendency to want to ask in those groups, be careful, because hear me, I'm asking you 5,000 questions just to get an answer.
Right.
So
Right.
it's
And
always a lot that goes into it.
yeah, and since you mentioned that, for those of you who are not in our Facebook group, we would love for you to join us, and we can pop that up into the comments and on the screen a little bit. But um, this is a good area to kind of jump in and get some questions answered, but then also know that you can reach out to us to be able to ask Dr. Cubitt or Dr. Duran, who is also with Performance Horse Nutrition, any questions that you have. Because, like she said, in some of these situations, even her right now, sometimes it's a little bit difficult to be able to get everything she needs from you to be able to give you an appropriate answer. And we do want to make sure that we are helping you all as best as we possibly can and giving you good direction, because there's enough bad direction and bad instructions out on the internet. So we don't want to add to that by any means.
We try.
Yeah. So, okay. This is the one I think I was going with. So Cindy says, I feed soaked beet pulp to a few brood mares along with their grain ration. Is it safe or to soak them overnight in the summer?
Depends on where you live. If you live in California or Florida or somewhere really hot, no, don't soak it overnight. That's gross. The flies will get in it and it could start to ferment. If you live in a cold area and you don't have a lot of insects and you can keep it covered and it's not fermenting, then it'll be fine. But it depends on the outside climate.
Yeah. Okay, Terry says, does Bermuda hay cause colic? And if so, what is better to feed them?
Oh, again. So Bermuda grass, the name Bermuda grass gets a bad rap. But really, Bermuda grass, there is a whole slew of different varieties of Bermuda grass under that heading. So the one that actually causes some issue is coastal Bermuda grass. And it's a warm season grass and it's pretty low in nutritional value. And if you see it, it's very fine and thin. And so when your horse eats it, it doesn't press on, I'm trying to use my hands here, but in the intestine, along the intestinal walls, there are things called stretch receptors. And when there's gut fill, it presses on those stretch receptors and it causes this peristaltic contraction to push the food through the horse's gut. Now, the coastal Bermuda grass is so fine, it never really pushes on those stretch receptors, so it can cause impaction sometimes. So when people say, coastal is very popular in our area, it's inexpensive, I've got some, I always say just mix it with something else, whether it be some alfalfa or some orchard grass, so that we have different texture, so that we don't have that issue. But also know that coastal Bermuda grass hay is typically pretty low in nutritional value. It's just something to chew on. Now, I've seen some hay analysis from Bermuda grass hay that was grown down in Texas, and it was beautiful. It was amazing. So don't lump all Bermuda under the same heading. Look at the variety first.
Excellent. Okay, and Lindsay says, can you talk about the myths, truths of feeding alfalfa? So many opinions, especially for young off-the-track thoroughbreds.
Oh my God. Yes, and I'm glad you point that out. There are so many opinions. Really, alfalfa has a time and a place. It's fantastic for a young horse that needs extra protein for growth. For a horse, lactating broodmare, she's putting a lot of protein into making milk. Or an exercising horse that it's hard to maintain their body weight, or a horse that is any horse that is hard to maintain the body weight because it's high in calories. It's high in good quality protein. When I say good quality protein, I mean the amino acid lysine. It is the first limiting amino acid, which means that requirement needs to be met before any other amino acid will even get used. So it does have more calories in it. Great for all the categories that I just described, but let's say we have a fat pony. I wouldn't feed it alfalfa. Not because it's going to cause laminitis, because it's also very low in sugars and starches, but it's got extra calories in it. So if the horse is already fat and you don't want it to get any fatter, then we can't feed it extra calories. Your horse, young, off-the-track thoroughbred, I think alfalfa is perfect. It is calories that I'm sure that off-the-track thoroughbred needs. Young horse, maybe still developing, growing, so it's good quality protein. So that is what I say about alfalfa.
Excellent. Okay. Janie says, can I feed soaked forage products prior to exercise? This is a myth, not to fill their bellies before a big trail ride or exercise event.
See, and I've heard that, not from any professional, but I've heard that myth. And I think, especially for a long trail ride or an endurance ride, you will see that the expert endurance riders, they feed hay and water prior. And the reason is that they want gut fill and they want that hay to act like a reservoir, because they know that a dehydrated horse is really, really dangerous. So for you going on a big trail ride, absolutely I'd feed soaked forage products prior to exercise. It is forcing more hydration because they want to eat it, they're going to eat it, and every mouthful gives them more water. So absolutely I would feed it for that exact reason, to fill their bellies and fill their whole gut with extra moisture and water so they don't dehydrate.
Nice. Okay. Janie asks, oh, got another question. Can clover cause a horse to founder?
Oh, clover by itself, if I have a normal healthy horse and it eats clover, it's not going to founder. But again, clover is a legume, so it's higher in calories. And if you have already a horse that is predisposed to foundering or laminitis because he's fat, got a crusty neck, then any high calorie food can tip them over the edge. But clover as an ingredient isn't known to cause founder.
Okay. Jennifer asks, is putting goldfish in your water trough beneficial to your horse's health?
I don't think the goldfish do anything as long as your horse don't eat the goldfish. That would be pretty gross. I think growing up where I did in Australia, people didn't have goldfish per se, but sometimes they did put fish in like stock troughs, and it was more the birds would eat them. I don't think the goldfish do anything.
Didn't really work out that well. Okay. And Cindy asks, does feeding alfalfa unbalance the calcium to phosphorus ratio?
There's it can be yes and no. I mean, if you feed alfalfa and you're already feeding if you feed a bunch of alfalfa and you're already feeding, maybe you're mixing your own feed and you're not if you don't take the alfalfa into consideration, then sure it can, especially if you're feeding large quantities. But what you'll notice, so I work with a couple of feed companies on the West Coast that actually one big feed company that they know that especially on the West Coast, alfalfa is very popular and very common. And so they will actually have an A and a G line. And so when we have developed that feed, we know that if you're feeding more than 50% alfalfa, that you would feed the A version of the product because it has a little less calcium in it and a little less protein. So yeah, I always recommend that you work with a professional, and calcium to phosphorus ratio is very important. But also know that an adult horse, you can go as high as 5-to-1 calcium to phosphorus. So you got to be doing some crazy stuff to really unbalance the calcium and phosphorus ratio in an adult horse. It's much more important in a young growing horse that we don't. And the worst thing is to get more phosphorus than calcium. So feeding alfalfa it's not necessarily going to unbalance the calcium phosphorus ratio. It's just going to kind of make a lot of calcium.
Excellent. Okay, Sally says, what about chia seed quote unquote pudding? It is anti-inflammatory, gets gummy to grab sand/dirt particles.
I saw that in the comments and I was wondering if you were going to bring it up, because chia seeds act similarly to the psyllium. They do kind of, if you've ever eaten chia pudding, it kind of makes that glue-like consistency. But again, you have to feed a larger quantity. It can't just be 1 or 2 tablespoons of the chia pudding.
Okay. And this question could depend on probably some other questions, but is alfalfa hay okay for older thoroughbreds?
Sure. Yeah, I mean, older, if he's not overweight, if he needs to maintain weight and it's hard for him to maintain weight, or her, then alfalfa's great. But again, it depends on a lot of things. Now, the other issue that some people say, I don't want to feed alfalfa because it causes kidney problems. No, it doesn't cause kidney problems. If your horse already has an underlying kidney issue, then you don't want to feed a lot of protein. But alfalfa on its own will not cause kidney problems.
Excellent. And Jennifer says, is whey-based protein feeds better for horses than soy-based protein feeds?
Protein's protein. No, good quality protein is good quality protein. I look at amino acids, lysine, methionine, threonine, whether they come from soy or whey. Soy is less expensive than whey. We use a lot of whey in supplements. It's a nice carrier. Also has a, kind of a nice color, but no.
Okay. And we have time for maybe a couple more questions. We'll try to squeeze in. Fact, myth, corn, alfalfa, sweet feed, oats will make a horse, quote unquote, hot or high spirited.
Corn, your grains, corn, oats, barley, sweet feed. I'm going to take alfalfa out of that and say corn, oats, barley, or the sweet feed, which is a mixture of those and molasses, very high in sugars and starches. It's quick release energy. And yes, it can, research has shown, and anecdotally, we've all seen it, when you fed those feeds, it can change your horse's behavior because of those kind of energy pathways that it is fueling. It can cause a little bit more excitable behavior. I take alfalfa out of that because it doesn't have that quick release energy. If you fed alfalfa to your horse and he did get a little higher spirited, it's probably just got more calories in it than, say, a grass hay. But I don't lump alfalfa into the corn, sweet feed, oat category. It's certainly not as energy dense as those.
Excellent. Okay, we're going to try to squeeze in one more question. And if we haven't,
lives go so fast.
I know it does seem to go by really quick. Leah, what do you look for when picking to buy hay?
Why did you put the hardest question up here, Katie? Okay, again, what are you buying the hay for? Are you buying it for the First Lady's Mini, or the Last Lady's old thoroughbreds, or maybe we had some young thoroughbreds in here? You gotta give me the criteria of the horses that you're feeding. Okay, well, I have a boarding stable and I have a whole slew of different horses. Okay, so then when you have a boarding stable and you have a wide variety of different horses, I go when I talk about good and bad hay is always the same. Dirt, dust, weeds, rats, molds, sticks, anything that shouldn't be in there. That is bad hay. I don't matter what form it comes in, it's always bad. Good hay then comes down to what's appropriate for the horses you're feeding. So I said, well, you've got a boarding stable and you've got a wide variety of different horses that you're trying to feed. I go with a hay that maybe is a bit of middle of the road when it comes to nutritional value. And you might say, well, why isn't she recommending the highest nutritional value hay? What if we've got the fat pony who's on the edge of foundering all the time? We can't feed him a lot. And then we've got an old horse that needs a boatload of extra calories. A horse, no matter whether they're sick, fat, thin, they have a minimum feeding requirement for hay. It's about 1.5% of their body weight. And you have to feed that to keep the gut moving. So if you pick a hay for this wide variety of different horses you've got, that's middle of the road nutritional value, then for the older thoroughbred or the brood mare or the riding pony that does a lot of lessons and he doesn't maintain his weight well, we can add some alfalfa pellets, maybe some Standlee Timothy orchard pellets or something, some chopped products, some additional to improve the nutritional value. But if you go in and all you buy is prime, perfect, like dairy quality alfalfa, you're only going to be able to feed 3 horses in your barn and the rest of them aren't getting anything.
Right. And she mentioned she has a working ranch quarter horse out of Washington.
Okay, so if the horse is fat, then I would say teff hay is great. Your lower calorie hay, first cut orchard or Timothy. But again, what is the most important thing to do when you're going to go buy hay, especially if you're buying large quantities? Know the horses that you're feeding and then get a hay test, right? And hay test is going to tell you how much protein, how much energy, how palatable it is, how digestible it is. And those things are really important because that is your foundation and you're going to build on that.
Right. And so I know we're up on our time, and before we draw for our free product coupons, do not leave yet. I wanted to post this comment because I think it's really important for everybody that's on here with us today to understand. Tracy says, I love that you had tons of questions to my basic question. Thank you. And the lesson that I want to come from this is the fact everybody has good intentions when they're sharing advice. They want you to succeed. They're glad when they feel like they know something and they want to help you and share their knowledge. But this is where it comes down to, and Dr. Cubitt has shown that, I think, especially tonight, is the fact that if you ask a basic question, you will get so many answers. But Dr. Cubitt tended to ask a lot more questions on some of them than she was giving answers because she did not have enough information from you to give you a good answer. So keep that in mind when you are in your Facebook groups and you're asking questions. That doesn't mean, right, we've talked about this before, that doesn't mean that you don't ever talk to anybody. It's great for you to, take in information and learn things. But before you make decisions, make sure that you have a really good, solid team put together, like an equine nutritionist, your veterinarian, your farrier, your trainer, things like that, where you can, like Dr. Cubitt has said in the past, you can bounce those ideas off of them and see the kind of overall value that you can get from what you're hearing. So,
and join our Facebook group.
Yes, please. We're going to pop that up one more time just so you all know what that's all about. And I know we're putting some of this information in the comments for you as well. Please, before you get off today, fill out the survey that we have. It'll let us know if we're doing a good job on these, if we need to improve. And Dr. Cubitt and I are okay. If we need to improve on anything, we're okay to be critiqued. We're okay with that. So let us know. I also wanted to let you guys know that this recording will be available in a day or two on our Standlee YouTube channel. So if you want to watch it again, or if you want to share it with your friends, or in any of the Facebook groups that you are in that you feel like it would provide some good value to, please go ahead and do that. And go to our website and sign up. We have a lot of stuff going on. As you saw with our rebrand, we have all these products and the changes and everything. So go sign up for our email list. We also, since you guys are on here, you get to know first that we will be having a coupon promotion coming up in August. And we would love for you guys to be able to know when that's happening so you can be a part of that. And we thank you for, your loyalty and being with us and everything. So one other thing I wanted to mention is the Beyond the Barn podcast is on a break for the month of July. So you're not going to see any new episodes from us this month, but that means you can go back. We have 62 episodes. If you haven't listened to them all, please go back and listen to the ones you haven't had a chance to listen to. So you can catch up on those. We will be back August 1st with a brand new episode, and we'll be really excited for that.
And you've got some good ones coming up. You recorded some with Dr. Duran.
Right. If you didn't have a chance to listen to episode 62, Dr. Duran and I had the chance to go because Dr. Cubitt was off gallivanting in New Zealand.
Yes.
But we went to the Equine Science Society Symposium, which was phenomenal. And we basically got to hear the latest and greatest research that is currently being done in equine science. We kind of talked about that on episode 62, just kind of summarized some of the things that we heard. But we're going to be taking some of those talks that we heard, some of the researchers that we know, and we're going to have them on the Beyond the Barn podcast over this next year. So be looking for some really amazing content. I'm very excited for us to learn from all of these very knowledgeable individuals that are doing some amazing research. So, okay, the moment you guys have all been waiting for and have been patiently waiting, so I appreciate
it. Coupons.
Okay, so for sharing this Facebook Live, I don't know if I'm going to say your last name correctly, but Janie Dorr. I don't know if I'm saying that correctly, so forgive me if I'm wrong, but thank you for sharing. Please, you can message me or you can email me at podcast@standlee.com. And we'll get you your free product coupons. And then our other winner for tonight is Tracy Gregg. Thank you, everybody who has been on and been so wonderful asking all of these great questions. Join our Facebook group if you want to come in and ask more questions, interact with Dr. Cubitt. And if you guys have any questions that we might have missed, feel free to reach out to us, join the group, and we can help get those answered for you. But I think that's all that we have for this evening. So, Dr. Cubitt, thank you for your time and your knowledge and expertise in all of this information you shared tonight.
Thank you. It's got dark while I've been sitting here and I didn't have the office light on. And now it looks like I'm going to start reading scary stories or something. We've got to get off. I look terrible.
Late night time. All right. Thank you so much. We'll talk to you all later.
Bye.